So, yeah, should we just dive right in, Carl?
Yeah, let's do it. Kick off with the chamber.
Oh, of course, yeah. What did you make of the chamber, mate?
Do you know what? I'm considering that we've been talking about it for a while. It's a bit of a write-off. It didn't mean anything because let's be honest, we already know what's happening for Mania. I actually thought the actual quality of it was better than some of the other pay-per-views of late, in terms of the match types and stuff. So all in all, I thought I was actually pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I mean there were some good matches in there, even the ones that were totally signposted, and we'll sort of talk in a level of order. Even the ones that were totally signposted and you knew what the result was going to be, weren't too bad a match to watch. So it wasn't a bad pay-per-view, really. Not the best by any means, but I would have watched this over Showdown, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, definitely, me too. And I think it's mad, really, when you look at the match card, because it didn't even have a lot of star power on it, to be fair. Which I feel like it seems to be that way on TV a little bit lately as well, which is kind of crazy when they're coming up into Mania. But considering the lack of star power, I thought it was pretty decent.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's funny, really, without digressing, a couple of minutes in, but some of the criticism that AEW gets is the sort of their lack of star power and their reliance on old WWE stars. But I mean, really speaking, that the same can be very much said for WWE. If you look at the current modern stars, there's a bit of a lack of star power there, and when they do rely heavily on old stars, as you can see in Showdown and in coming Raws and SmackDowns. But yeah, this was by all accounts a quiet one, really, for that. With a bit of a taker involved at one point, wasn't it? But
yeah, I suppose it was a little bit refreshing in that sense, but at the same time, did hinder it a little bit because you didn't have that, major, main event kind of feel that you would do from other pay-per-views.
Yeah, if it went for the actual Elimination Chamber match, it probably would have felt like a normal week, really. A good example of that would be if we start going into the matches, the Daniel Bryan versus Drew Gulak. That's something you'd expect to see on a standard weekly show. And weirdly, they built it up over a couple of weeks and had it as a pay-per-view match. And to be fair, it was a good match. I enjoyed that match.
Me too. I think, in fairness, the two of the more technical, gifted wrestlers on the roster today, and it was good to kind of see. I'm not very well versed with Drew Gulak, to be fair, but seeing him against Bryan, who obviously is one of the master technicians out there, I really thought he held his own and kind of elevated himself, to me anyway, who doesn't really know him that well.
I totally agree. I was in a very similar boat. I don't really know Drew. I know the name. He's been knocking around. He hasn't really been given any sort of push, but I haven't seen a lot of him in the ring. And the reason I think I enjoyed the match so much is I was there with Bryan. Like, by the end of the match, he had my respect as well. Do you know what I mean? Because I was actually, yeah, you put on a damn good show. And that was kind of what they did storyline-wise, where Daniel Bryan was kind of like, God, he didn't even tap out. He's, and they sort of played that role. And I like that. It's a bit different as stories go. It was just strictly a good guy versus bad guy kind of deal. But yeah, I think that kind of helped me enjoy it because it's like, yeah, it's a good come up for him. You look at him and go, yeah, I'd probably enjoy any future matches he's in. It'd be interesting to see where they go with it story-wise.
I think on a previous podcast I said I didn't really know where they were going to go with Bryan after the whole Fiend feud that he had. I definitely wasn't expecting it to go this direction. It kind of came out of nowhere a little bit, but it has been a little kind of enjoying to kind of watch him, have this game plan and tell all the other wrestlers like he knows how to beat Daniel Bryan, and it was interesting to see in the match, him trying to execute that game plan. He pulled off, some of Bryan's own moves with the Mexican surfboard, things like that, which I thought was
exactly. It was good to see that you see him play it like he has studied him, and that it was really good. Like the way he was countering some of the Daniel stuff, and you go, well, yeah, it really comes across like what he was saying was true, that he has analysed it all and he can beat him. Obviously, unfortunately for him, he didn't, but it wasn't for the one to try, and it was a very good match to watch. And like you say, he's a lot more technically gifted than I realised.
Yeah, I think he kind of, it stood out to me that he could hold his own technically against Bryan, which, isn't the easiest thing to do. So, fair play to the guy.
Yeah. No, I think if anything's going to give him a good push, a good elevation, it's having that with Bryan, like you say. While he didn't win, he's come out looking really well from it, and it's hard to go toe to toe with that man. I mean, he's been top of the company, and probably will be again at some point in his career.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, obviously, the next match we had Andrade and Humberto. I must admit, from a storyline perspective, I've been finding it hard to get into these two. That being said, I can see something in Angel Garza. I think he's a future star right there. But I've not really been following this story. I think some of what didn't help was Andrade going on his suspension as well. Kind of took away from the whole thing. But I didn't have a lot invested in this match. It was a decent match, but it's certainly not one for me that I would sort of write home about, as it were.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there when you mentioned, obviously, the unfortunate timing of Andrade's wellness violation. I think what they did by bringing Garza up, it was very good for him because it gave him the opportunity to shine and get that kind of main audience. I think he's doing really well with it, but it feels like they went down that little Humberto Garza feud thing, and then they've just gone back to the original Andrade Humberto thing. And as you said, I'm not massively invested in this. Like, don't get me wrong, they're very, very good lucha libre style wrestlers, and they always put on a good match. I think this one was probably one of the better matches that they've had together. I think what shocked me is that we're both here saying, we're not really that invested in it, but I think if I remember rightly, the fans seemed really into this match, which did surprise me. I think they even had a "This is awesome" chant at one point, which, considering we're not invested in them, they must be doing something right, I guess. But for me, I just don't have any kind of emotional investment in it.
No, I totally agree. It's weird, isn't it? Because, I mean, obviously by no means are we the say-so on wrestling, so it does show you that sometimes our opinion can massively differ to what the WWE universe, as they were, are thinking, and they did seem to be really behind this. But for me, I preferred Humberto, versus Angel Garza. They had that sort of family feud to it. It felt sort of not too serious, but you could get behind the feud, and I don't know. I just enjoyed it more. And then for me, it was a bit sort of jarring when Andrade come back, and it was like, right, we'll sideline that and put that sort of feud back together. And I mean, obviously, people have seen something in it, and they are good wrestlers. I'm not going to discredit them, and it was a good match. I just didn't have the investment in it myself.
Yeah, I think it was interesting because I don't think Humberto's been very well booked of late, but it was interesting that Andrade had to do a pull of the tights, on the roll up in order to get the win. So I think they were trying to maybe claw back a bit of redemption for the poor booking that Humberto's been through. But all in all, one of the better matches they've had. But I wasn't that into it as a whole, just because I'm not into that storyline.
In terms of poor booking, I suppose Humberto's took the brunt of the violation, the change in storyline, the being on the losing side of it repeatedly. It probably does help a little bit in that sense, because he's not really come out well from the feud, I'll be honest. And right, we'll go on to the first. Probably no, there was two chamber matches in total, wasn't it? So we had the tag chamber, which was a little bit different. I think we have seen one before, haven't we? But I don't know. I enjoyed it, but there were certain tag teams there that you're like, well, do they even need to be? Or they're just there to fill out spots, aren't they? Really, Lucha House Party is probably the main one I'm going to reference to there. It was useful in the sense that they could keep the heavy machinery versus Ziggler, and I say sort of Ziggler. It's basically Otis versus Ziggler in it, but it was nice to see that bit of progression in there. But we all knew that the result was going to come down to, or certainly for me anyway, the result was always going to come down to either the Usos or Miz and Morrison. It just that's sort of how they've been signposting it right up to now. And then obviously, typically we got what I was kind of hoping for, but quite expected as well, in Miz and Morrison taking the titles, or retaining the titles, sorry.
Yeah, I don't think it was a very surprising match. I think it was difficult to follow at times because I think there was a point where they were all in there together, and I think normally on a chamber match you might have 6 or maybe at most 8, but there was 10 of them in there all trying to do their own stuff and get their own spots off. So it was quite difficult. I think, in fairness, as you've said, like it didn't need all them teams, and like we mentioned, Lucha House Party, but at the same time, I actually they were the standouts for me in this Lucha House Party. I thought some of the stuff they did, even though they botched a little bit of it, but the stuff they did, it was like they were the big spots and the memorable spots when I think back to that match. So they did actually quite impress me, Lucha House Party, in that.
No, I mean, it's a fair point. I'm probably getting too wrapped up in the storyline elements of going, what's the point in them even being here? But I do take your point from a wrestling standpoint. In terms of the big spots, they were probably the guys involved each time. But yeah, I suppose I get too wrapped up in kayfabe in that sense. I'm like, well, what's the fucking point? Why are you here?
But I mean, it's valid though, isn't it? Because they have literally just gone, oh, we'll throw this tag team in and this tag team in, and it doesn't really make sense. Like, you get the kind of New Day, Usos, and Miz and Morrison, like little mini feud, and you get the Ziggler and Otis thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably it, that they've not involved them at all right up until the Chamber. And it's like, well, everyone, like, it wasn't a massive thing between the New Day and the Usos, but there was a little bit there. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, there was a little touch of, oh, we could beat you, and so on. So, I don't know, like you say, it wouldn't have took much to build them into it, even just the week before or a couple of weeks before. It just very much felt like, well, there's a spare space in the chamber if you want it.
Yeah, they probably went, oh shit, there's an extra chamber there. Oh, we'll just put Lucha House Party in it, damn it.
That's what Vince was just back there going, wait, there's how many chambers?
Yeah, well, pretty much.
I mean, yeah, it wasn't a bad match. Like you say, it was probably a bit busy, but you're probably always going to have that trouble as well with a tag team chamber match. But overall, not bad.
Yeah,
it seems to be my whole mentality for this pay-per-view. It wasn't bad. It was okay. Right, so we had AJ versus Alistair as the next one. How did you feel about this one, Carl?
Underwhelmed, I'd say. Like, they built it up as it being a no DQ thing, which straight away, you go and, oh, well, obviously the OC are going to get involved in it. And typically they did. It was just, I don't know, I just felt really underwhelmed by it. And I think in the previous episode, when we were doing our predictions, it was really predictable and obvious to me that Taker would get involved with this, and then Alistair would end up winning it. So it just, it writes itself. But at the same time, that's not always a good thing, because if you're literally not, if it's so obvious, then is it really that good? Do you know what I mean? So underwhelmed, I'd say, to describe it, which is a shame, because I was actually quite looking forward to seeing AJ and Alistair, but meh.
No, I totally agree, and arguably on paper, it should be a good match. They are good wrestlers. I've had some issue with Alistair's booking so far, anyway. As I moaned about last week when they booked him to have not read his contract, just because. And this time it's just like, well, you've agreed to a no DQ match, knowing exactly what's going to happen in the sense of them interrupting, and us as an audience know exactly what's going to happen in kayfabe, and that Taker's going to interrupt and cost him it in some way. You did touch on something, and we still don't know what's going to happen just yet, but you did touch on something, I think it was last week, where you suggested that the Taker match at WrestleMania might not be as straightforward as AJ and Taker, which would be interesting. If they're going to include Alistair in some way, I'd be interested to see that, in all honesty.
I think I can still see it happening, because I don't know where Alistair goes from here. So after his AJ thing, if AJ and Taker are definitely a thing now, and he's calling them out, what happens to Alistair? They've done a good job. Well, they've done an okay job in building him up in terms of the level of opponents he's managed to get wins over. But like, if he's not involved with AJ, then where does he go for Mania, which is around the corner? So, strange one.
Yeah, it is a strange one, and hopefully they don't try and do something with the OC, because no offense to them, They were really big in New Japan by all accounts, but they've just not been anything really since they come into this. The best thing they could have done was team with AJ, but even so, they're just there to job out, aren't they? Really?
Yeah.
But again, typically of this pay-per-view, it was another okay match. It was good. So probably, I dare say, my least favourite match of the night was the next one, the tag titles, Street Profits versus Murphy and Rollins. And again, just because, what the fuck,
It just felt like a Raw match. It was like it had no place on a pay-per-view card. It was just the same shit we see every week, and it was just underwhelming.
Every week.
And
it's
you had the Street Profits, and you had Rollins and Murphy, but then they can never just be in it themselves. Obviously, AOP have got to get involved, and obviously the fucking Viking Raiders out of nowhere have to get involved. Like, why are they even fucking part of this? Do you know what I mean? And then obviously Owens would have to get involved. So it's just every episode of Raw.
Yeah, it was an unnecessary mess. I'd have had more respect for this match had it have been a clean match, just one tag team versus another. They could have built the Street Profits up. They could have done a nice victory for them, and it would have been boss. I would have enjoyed it more. But I don't know what the mentality is with Raw at the minute. But it's like something has to happen, and they think that that's what makes it exciting. When in actual fact, that's what's making it sort of annoying and boring.
Yeah.
But if you look at most of what happens on Raw at the minute, it's like interruption or this happens or that, and you're like, just have a fucking straight match.
They can't do it. Like, they literally have to get involved all the time, and I completely agree. It was my least favourite match on the whole card, and it literally just felt like I'd just seen it on Raw, the week before. So it was like, great.
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm a little, my memory's gone a little bit on this. Was it Street Profits won this match, or was it actually Rollins and Murphy?
No, Street Profits. I think Owens got involved, caused a distraction.
Because I know that they sort of originally won the titles on Raw, didn't they? Which was unusual in itself. And sorry, it just lost me for a second. So this was a rematch, But even so, it's like you say, we've seen these things, and I don't even mind them as a tag. Well, they're not my favourite tag team, but I don't mind them as a tag team. It's I think again something you've touched on in previous podcasts. It's nice to see when they're actually uniform and they have a name and they feel like a deliberate tag team and not something that's been slapped together. And I'm glad to see the titles on them, but I still sit there and go to myself, why weren't the Authors of Pain given a shot with the belts and booked like monsters? I don't get it.
Well, that's it. You've got a tag team there who are dressed the same and have got a proper name in the AOP, and then you kind of put them in a little faction with Rollins and Murphy and give them the tag off. I think we both agreed it didn't make any fucking sense.
And they're both built like brick shit houses, so they could have easily just held the titles and tore through whatever tag teams were thrown. Even if you put these slapped together tag teams against them, and they could have made them look strong for weeks. And then maybe had them go against Street Profits and even maybe let the Street Profits beat them, and then it would have been a lot more of a victory in that sense. They would have earned it a lot more. They would have got the crowd over a lot more. But instead, we get this mess.
I can only think that's where it's leading to, because there's obviously going to be a Seth and Owens thing. So Murphy's going to have to be dropped, isn't he? Let's be honest, because if he's not in a tag team with Rollins anymore, because Rollins will be focused on Owens, then where does he?
Yeah, I mean, they certainly, without moving too far away from Elimination Chamber, they do certainly seem to be pushing it to Seth getting pissed off with Murphy, maybe pushing him away, but without pulling too much away from kayfabe. I believe Murphy is a Paul Heyman guy, isn't he?
Oh, really?
So, yeah, by all accounts, he's a Paul Heyman. It's been Paul Heyman pushing for him, sort of in the main event or in the Rollins stable, as it were, and getting that bit of a push. So I don't know. It makes me think that he might stick around in some sense, just because Paul Heyman's doing a lot of working behind the scenes, a lot on the writing. That being said, he was also a Ricochet guy, so it's not like Vince isn't going to bury someone that Paul Heyman likes, because he certainly fucking will.
Well, that's it. But he's just gone, hasn't he? He's literally dead and buried, Paul Ricochet.
Well,
and obviously
that 24/7 match that fucked him.
Well, that's it, and yeah, I feel like it's important that because he is our number one listener, so I think it's important that we do give him a shout out and just say that we hope you come back stronger, Ricochet, because you can't come back any fucking weaker. So
that's it. I mean, have you heard of NXT? They need people.
Interesting.
We say it from a place of love, Rick. But yeah, and you know what? I did say that taking the piss, but maybe he does need to sort of move away from, not even necessarily Raw, move away from Vince, go to NXT, stick around Triple H. He seems to have his head screwed on a bit better, and build yourself back up, man. I mean, it was just upsetting.
I would kill to see a Ricochet and Finn Balor match.
Can you imagine? That would be a really good match to watch.
So who knows? But I mean,
you might have to go all the way
on the main brand. Hey,
the Ricochet'd have to go all the way to the UK for that one, I think, by now.
Oh, is Balor on NXT UK now?
I don't know if he's on there yet, because it's one of the shows we don't watch or cover, I don't think. But he was making noise about going for the UK title, and then I saw a promo of some sort where he was holding his passport, or a picture where he was holding his passport. So I think the suggestion is he's heading out that way.
Well, I think he might actually fit in well, Ricochet, in the NXT UK brand. You've got the Irish Finn Balor and then the Irish Rick O'Shea.
Yeah, they could totally redo his gimmick. That'll be spot on. Just needs a good Irish accent. That's all you need. Love it. So tag titles, they weren't even okay. It was shit. It was awful. You booked it wrong.
Yeah.
And then we had another confusing mess. Not the worst match on the card. That's still the tag titles, but the IC title 3-on-1.
Yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all.
What was that? Like what the fuck happened? Like I actually feel sorry for Braun.
Yeah.
I think he's like never held a belt before in his life. By all accounts, I didn't realize that, but there you go. He never held a title before, and then he gets it and then loses it to Sami Zayn.
I mean, I was surprised as fuck about that. I mean, in fairness, they didn't do a very good job of explaining the rules. I didn't know how it was going to work, whether it was, the person who pins and wins the belt, or, if any of the three of them pin him, then Shinsuke would win it. I didn't know if it was all three of them in there against Braun at once, or whether they ultimately went down the, you'd have to be tagged in approach. So they did a fucking awful job of explaining what to expect, but I mean, I was hella surprised the fact that Zayn won it, because that just came out of nowhere.
See, this is one of them surprises though, where it's not a good surprise. That's like me going, do you know what? I was surprised that Hornswoggle turned up and pinned Brock. Like, yeah, that's pretty shocking, but it's not a good shock.
I mean, I don't know if that happens at Mania.
And what I don't get, like from a storyline point of view, Sami Zayn's pinned him and picked the title up and ran off, going, yeah. So I'm there going, okay, is that how it works? Because like you say, they didn't really explain it. And then I thought, could that be a story that it wasn't fully clear? So Sami thinks he's the title holder, and then Shinsuke is going to get pissed off, and then it's going to split them up and maybe cause a feud there. But without moving into another show, that's not what's happened. Everyone's fine with it. Even Shinsuke's like, yeah, you're the champ now.
Yeah.
And then from a booking point of view, you go, why did you ever put your title on the line like this, Shinsuke? Fucking hell. The fuck was this?
Yeah,
so anyone won that belt, it basically was a 4-way match.
Pretty much, yeah.
It was a fatal 4-way where two of them didn't fucking know it was a fatal 4-way.
So basically, Sami Zayn's pulled off a fucking masterclass, I think, let's be honest.
Yeah, he's got two people to win a fucking belt for him.
It's genius, really.
Yeah, to be honest, the more I'm talking about it, the more I'm like, actually, yeah, it's fucking brilliant. But yeah, it just puzzles me. They've not even moved it into like a Shinsuke being annoyed over that. That being said, by all accounts, in real life, Shinsuke is not too thrilled with his bookings. But how would you not be pissed off with that?
It doesn't make any sense, does it? It's almost as though it hasn't been very well thought through.
I know. It's almost as if they don't really write these things properly.
Yeah.
It's almost as if a creepy old man turns out when he feels like and just tears the storylines apart.
Maybe
not naming any names.
Maybe that could. Nah, surely not.
For the sake of anonymity, we'll call him V. McMahon. Or Vince M, whichever works. Sorry, I stole that from The Simpsons, I'll be honest. Right, and then we move on to, I imagine this was the main event, the Women's Chamber match.
Yeah, I think you go from something big surprise, big shock, to what we knew all along.
Yeah. Like, what the bit I did get from it, and I don't know how you felt about this, but she dominated. And didn't expect it to go as clean cut as that. She fucking ruined everyone. It was more the way the match went out, really, that surprised me. I'm like, they didn't really, not that they needed to help anyone's cause, but, everyone's talking a big game before it. And then she just tore through them all. And there's some really good women's wrestlers there. There's some, like, Asuka and the like. So, yeah, that was strange.
Yeah, I believe this was another Paul Heyman call. I think it was something he tried to make happen for CM Punk back in the day, just to have him go through and submit everyone and be, like this big dominant force. So it was interesting that they gave Shayna that level of rub, I guess, because apparently Vince wasn't that big on her of late.
Yeah, apparently he wasn't too keen on rubbing her. No.
Well, who would? Yeah, so I think it was interesting. It was definitely a big push for her by allowing her to kind of dominate the whole chamber in that way, but at the same time, not surprising because, it's as we said before. If she wouldn't have won the fucking thing, would Becky just forget about it anyway? Like, it was the most pointless match ever because it was so fucking. And to be the main event as well, it was just so obvious. Just felt pointless.
Yeah, it was pointless. It was almost as pointless as having a men's chamber, which they went, nah, fuck it, because we all knew Roman was going to get the title match. In fact, they went, yeah, don't even try. So it still pisses me off. That I'll moan about that a little bit later, right? When we talk SmackDown. But that still bugs me. It's like, yeah, fuck it. He's asked for the match. He'll get the match. But one bit that worries me now with Baszler is if she doesn't win against Becky. And it's a problem I had with The Fiend in the sense that they book them as this beast. Yeah. And then you go, yeah, they're unstoppable. She's just tore through a load of really good women's wrestlers. Same way The Fiend was unbeaten by a lot of really good wrestlers. And then if Becky wins, like Goldberg won, you then go, right, so is the inference here that Becky can just beat all of these people who, in actual fact, she's lost to some of them in the past? And to me, it's like they need to now follow through with it and have her win. They need her to be the unstoppable force. And I'm a bit worried that they're not going to do that because Vince is very up and down on her.
I mean, it is going to be interesting to see how they handle it because I think Becky feels quite stale as champion now. She's nowhere near as white hot as she was, last WrestleMania. She's still over. She still gets a good crowd reaction.
I think, luckily, she's still selling merch for them, so she's not going anywhere anytime soon. And I say luckily for her because, as far as I'm concerned, she is just fucking awful on the mic. She's just, and if she was meant to be annoying, then I'd go, all right, she's doing what she's meant to do. I don't think she's meant to be annoying. I think she just naturally is. So I can't. I lose interest every time she's on the fucking microphone. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
In which case, you're gonna have to tell me what a promo was this week, by the way.
Well, I mean, we'll come on to that when we go through Raw, but I don't think any of her promos have been very good of late. That one with the brown paper bag where she's paying a fine up front, that pissed me off. It's just shit.
I think they make it very confusing with her because she's so badass, but then there's a lot of other stuff happening on the show that's more badass, and it's almost like they're not looking at what else is happening around her. And I made that point with the paper bag thing, but the fact that she paid a fine on the same day that Randy Orton's like battering people with chairs, it's like, well, okay, does he pay a fine? Like,
not exactly.
Yeah, all you've done is say stuff, and I'm confident Shayna Baszler never mentioned the fine, and she bit you.
Well, exactly. I think they're trying to give her like the Stone Cold thing, but like I think you called it out on a previous episode where after she got bit, she then drove herself to the fucking hospital and then very politely drove the ambulance back. It was like, oh yeah, you're such a badass.
Yeah, so weird. That was such a weird booking. So I can't even remember where I saw it now, but it was. I think it might have been last week's Raw rather than the one we're going to talk about, where she came out and it was suggested that it was like she's sort of trying to copy Conor McGregor in terms of the cocky attitude and the dress style and that. And the more I look at it, I'm like, yeah, I wonder if that's what she's trying to mirror. But obviously, he does it in UFC, in actual fights in which he's trying to sort of psych someone out, so it has merit. Whereas she's doing it, I don't know, to be a dick.
Yeah,
I'm not saying he can't be a dick, but there's like a deliberate. It's cerebral in a sense, isn't it? He's deliberately trying to put people down and psych them out before a match, where she's just talking shit and trying to sound cocky.
Well, that's it. I think when McGregor does it, he comes across quite cocky, but at the same time, he's entertaining, and you kind of, you enjoy it. Whereas, as you've already said, when she does it, she can come across more annoying than like humorous a lot of the time. So, strange one.
Yeah, I mean, even some of the stuff, like some of the insults that she throws at Shayna, I think in her head they were really funny, and yet no one's laughing. You know what I mean? But we can talk more about that promo when we go on to Raw. So in terms of that's all the matches for me. In terms of a rating, I it was okay. As I've said a couple of times, it was an okay pay-per-view. I think you hit the nail on the head. That's this was very much a normal week. Really, had it not been for the Chamber, it just felt like a normal Raw or whichever. And for me, it was a 2-star pay-per-view.
Okay, I think I scored it only marginally higher at 2.5, and I think it was more the fact that it surprised me. It was better than I thought it was going to be, but at the same time, it was still a nothing pay-per-view, and it was still very predictable, with the exception of Sami winning the IC title. So, all in all, it definitely didn't, blow me away. But I think some of the matches in there, so Bryan and Gulak, I thought Andrade and Humberto's match was the best one they've had, and the tag chamber was pretty good as well. So considering them, I think it was probably around middle of the road. I think it was a better pay-per-view than WWE have been putting on of late. But at the same time, it was still just fucking pointless because, other than the Sami Zayn thing, I think it was all very predictable.
Yeah. Other than the Sami Zayn part, if they'd have not had this pay-per-view, wouldn't have really made a difference.
Yeah. They
could have just told us Shayna was going to go into the title match, and that would have been fine. And nothing else would have changed. So that's our thoughts on the Elimination Chamber. Now,
this is a clip from our weekly podcast, A2theK WrestleTalk. The full show can be found on Spotify, Apple, Google, and pretty much anywhere else that you find your podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you enjoy.